Welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. This is our 5th year doing this event. 2 years virtual, 2 years in person. We've now tipped the scales for our 5th year in person. So it's a pleasure to see you here all in person. But I would also love to welcome everyone on LinkedIn Live who are joining us virtually. So today I want to talk about Productivity Pathfinders, those companies that are achieving real results when it comes to Operation 2030 and the journey to Zero Plus. So last year at this event, I challenged the audience and all of our members with 2 ideas. The first being that if you don't transform, if you don't take some action in some of these areas that we're talking about, that you're thinking about, that you're working on, you may persist as a company. You may survive as a brand, as a product development organization, as a supply chain organization, but you very likely will not own or operate your assets. And the second was this concept of uncertainty is the only certainty, and an accelerating pace of change. So take a journey back in time. Think back a year ago at this event. Would you have predicted what happened over the past year? I remember planning for last year's event. We were still in the throes of the pandemic. There was a lot of concerns if we'd be able to challenge folks, if there would be travel restrictions or not. The Ukraine war was just starting. It was going to be a quick one. At least that was what Putin said, right? And now it's dragged on a year, and we're being dragged into a second war. Inflation has been trending down. Interest rates are persisting and even going higher. Organized labor has gained momentum. There has been pushback and politicization of ESG and DEI initiatives. And generative AI has gone from really the back room, the back office, to mainstream. I would not have predicted all these events. I don't think I would have predicted half these events. But that's not the only challenge. How do these events impact our businesses? So last year, the Inflation Reduction Act passed. One of the major implications from that, which you would not have necessarily assumed, was price controls across the US on drugs. And that's only going to increase. And that's putting new cost pressures on pharma companies that they haven't faced before. Many of those companies would not have predicted that. This one's an interesting one. I think it's the first time in human history that interest rates have gone up, and the demand for building materials have also gone up. Interest rates raised so quickly that nobody wants to sell their house. Nobody wants to give up their 2% mortgage for an 8% mortgage today, right? So home builders are building more. Nobody's selling. So would Owens Corning have predicted that? They made the Wall Street Journal a month ago. Probably not. They probably would have thought demand for my products are going to go down when interest rates go up. So how do we address this? How do we address this increasing pace of uncertainty? And it's what we talked about, what Mehul talked about in the vision, right? It is all about agility, flexibility, and sustainability. So one of the highlights that we've seen over the past 5 years, even the past 10 years, is an increasing focus on the idea of industrial transformation. We do this study, our industrial transformation tech study, every 2 years. We've been doing it since 2015. The skeptics, we've almost eliminated the skeptics. Only 12% of companies now believe that industrial transformation will not add benefit to the organization. Right? So we have over half of the companies who have initiatives, who are working on this, and another third that are in the planning stages. Right? So this is happening at scale in industry, which is very encouraging. But as more and more companies go down this journey, more and more challenges are emerging. So we saw 3 new challenges accelerate in 2023 as compared to 2021 and 2019. They were mainly around people and scalability. So the first, which we had one-to-ones yesterday, every single one-to-one I had, number one issue, right? Hiring, retaining, training a future-proofed workforce. And it shows in the data. The other, which is new to the agenda, which wasn't here 2 years ago, is scaling quick wins across the organization. In fact, a lot of companies don't even want to scale those quick wins. They need to scale transformation. And that scalability is a major challenge for a lot of organizations, and we'll dive deep on that today. And then the final one, which is new and emerging, is frontline and plant management buy-in. So we all have our own terms for industrial transformation. It could be digital transformation, digital manufacturing, smart manufacturing. Has that become a dirty word in your organization? Is it the corporate guys are here to help with smart manufacturing, or hey, the corporate guys are here to help, right? It's the way that you say it. We talk a lot about the power of prepositions, right? Is this something that is happening to the organization, with the organization, or buying for the organization? So these challenges are real. I first flashed this earlier in the year. Paul Boris and Mike Carroll spent a lot of time on this, also highlighting these trends, pointing us in this direction. If you look at overall labor productivity in manufacturing, or across industry, it has been a long-term up into the right trend. This has been going on for 40 years, really as long as we've existed as a country. But when you look at just the manufacturing industry, and it's a cruel twist of fate, but in 2011, when Industry 4.0 was first announced in Germany from their Institute on Artificial Intelligence, US manufacturing labor productivity flatlined. And we actually have lower labor productivity today as a country in manufacturing than we did in 2012. The problem is productivity is not just a throughput-output challenge. When you start to see productivity flatlining, you also start to see safety improvements flatlining. You start to see quality improvements flatlining. And this is the current state of the industry today, that each new benefit, each new incremental gain is harder to get than the last one. We are topping out, we are hitting the limit of our existing approaches to manufacturing. So what do we do? Unfortunately, a lot of times when I share this data, and I know this happens to others when they share this data, the typical response is cognitive dissonance. Let's find ways to say this isn't true. The definition must be wrong. The data must be wrong, right? It's government collected data. I can't really trust that data. It must not be accounting for changes in wages or inflation. It must not be accounting for outsourcing manufacturing to low-cost organizations and companies and countries. Hey, this is aggregate data across the entire country, right? My company's different. My company really is growing productivity and quality and safety improvements, although I might not be measuring it that well. But this is just one country and one input, right? Is this really a global challenge? Does it go into other areas of manufacturing, right? Like energy costs and energy intensity, or material costs and material intensity in our products. So there's a truth in those challenges. And it's always good to be challenged, right? It pushes you to think about new ways to figure out and improve. So can we assess global operations? Can we assess all the inputs, not just labor productivity, but energy productivity, material productivity? And can we use real audited financial data to test this? And the answer is yes, we can. So this is our first public preview of the Industrial Productivity Index. So we spent the last 6 months studying 166 publicly traded companies. This goes across 8 industrial sectors. And in each of those sectors, we have looked at the sub-industry that these companies are in. And we've assessed these companies on revenue, cost of goods sold, productive assets, so plant, property, and equipment, and then looked at price changes, both PPI and CPI within those sub-verticals. So if I'm ExxonMobil, the largest oil company in the world, am I more productive if oil prices go from $80 a barrel to probably $100 a barrel in the next 2 months? No, right? I just benefited from a change in commodity prices. So we want to eliminate that variance and account for those changes in prices and say, hey, I'm more productive if I actually deliver more product with less inputs. And that's what this is studying. And so it's not actually as bad as just the manufacturing labor data. So manufacturing labor productivity in the US is a challenge, and we need to focus on it, because when we don't improve productivity within a specific country, right? It impacts inflation, it impacts wages, and so those are major problems we have to target. But if you're running a global manufacturing company, right, you have your own set of challenges, which hopefully this index, which will be officially launched next year, will help point companies at this as a real challenge and something that is measurable and we can work on to improve as an organization. So when you look at those companies, which represent about $3.8 trillion of delivered product, the average CAGR for productivity improvements has been about 1% a year. Not what it needs to be on an aggregate to keep pace with our growth goals and our population growth within the country. But when you peel back and look at those 166 companies, it is not evenly distributed in terms of these productivity gains. In fact, only 8% of companies really have both short-term and long-term, so over the last 3 years and 10 years, consistent growth in productivity and consistent growth in revenue, right? It's easy in the short term to improve productivity. We can cut our way to productivity. There's entire businesses that then built business models around that. But long term, those assets will not continue to deliver the results you're looking for. So we call these companies Pathfinders. And when you look at these productivity Pathfinders, their average or their total cumulative growth over the last 10 years has been almost 30% in productivity. The other 92% of companies have been a negative growth rate in productivity over that same time period. So there's a big gap today in terms of resources and focus between large enterprises and small and medium enterprises. There's also a huge gap between these Pathfinders and every other large industrial that's publicly traded. There are many other potential areas of research in this data that we'll be exploring over time. One is the hidden factory. So everyone has a different business strategy. So can I keep my asset base the same and deliver more return on those assets over time? That's one strategy. The other is a scalable production system. So if I have real meaningful growth in the industry, can I take my 100 widgets with 10 units of input and scale that to 1,000 and 100, or 100,000 and 1,000? Right, so those are approaches and strategies that really do drive value and drive productivity gains, and we want to study those and highlight what companies are doing. So as we look through those 8% of companies, I wanted to highlight a few of them here today. The first one I wanted to highlight is Lockheed Martin. We've done a case study on them. We've worked with them for many years on their F-35 program. So they have improved productivity over the last 10 years. They've increased throughput over those years, and they've also dramatically improved profit over those years. So it's a great story. What have they done to achieve that? What are the common characteristics that can help companies transform their business and drive these productivity gains? Obviously, they have a great brand. Long-term demand is outstripping capacity, which is always a nice problem to have, and one of those key insights we've seen from these Pathfinders. Industrial productivity does not live in a vacuum. They have also reimagined their products. So they have next-generation software-enabled products along with their next-gen approach to manufacturing. They have adapted their business model, one to be much more configured to order, and they don't just now deliver products, they also deliver services with those products for the full life cycle of the product. So they've transformed not just manufacturing, but product design all the way through to service and MRO of those assets over time. They've embraced greenfield facility development. So when they build new facilities, they don't use the old template, right? They build next-gen factories. And they embrace technology, right? They embrace the concept of digital twin, digital thread, IoT, industrial transformation. They were early on in these concepts. They were doing these things in 2015, 2016. But it's not all they did. It was just a piece of what they did to drive these benefits. One of the other companies that stood out, and granted there is some base effect, right? They just started in 2010. 2012 was their first publicly traded year. They just moved from Roadsters to the sedan and Model 3 in 2012. but what Tesla has done over the past 10 years in terms of productivity growth, production scale, and profitability growth really is impressive. So as they have scaled the number of units delivered by over 16,000 over the past 10 years, they have also grown profit, and they have also grown productivity. So they don't just think about new products, they think about a new production system that is scalable. So what do they have that has helped them, and what similarities do they have to Lockheed and other Pathfinders? Right? Clearly they have a great brand and have a deep connection with their customers. The long-term demand for their products is outstripping their capacity, right? So they can invest again in greenfield facilities. They have a next-generation software-enabled product. They changed the way that they deliver products to customers. And they also embrace Industry 4.0 and industrial transformation. But it's not all they did, right? It was part of a larger business strategy to transform their business. So for everyone here in this room who's not Lockheed and who's not Tesla, what can you do to build a strategy that will drive change across your organization? So this is our view of what an industrial transformation strategy should look like. As Mehul referenced, it's really about it should just be your operations strategy. It should not be a separate pillar, a separate initiative. It has to be built into the core of your organization. First, I think you need to name it and brand it as a strategy for your organization. We use the term Operation 2030, which Mehul just introduced. It's a great one. Steal it with pride or come up with your own, but name it and brand it. Clearly set your goals and your targets and refresh and align those to your objectives over time. We like the idea of the power of zero, right? You can never get to zero by just improving 1% every time, every year, every month, every quarter, right? You have to transform to get there. But that might not be the right approach or the right culture for your organization, but set some of those stretch goals for your organization. And then set some of your strategic initiatives. We like the idea of people, process, and technology. So we think companies will really benefit from the idea of having different strategic initiatives aligned to people, process, and technology within your organization that support the overall industrial transformation initiative and operations strategy. So in our language, we call that the future of industrial work, digital performance excellence, and the factory of the future autonomous plant. And so each of those have people, process, and technology capabilities. They all need to be aligned, so you can almost think of it as a matrix. But each one takes the lead in one of those areas, and the others key off it. And then finally, what's the underpinning of this? Thinking architecturally. We call that operational architecture. That's how you scale this technology across the business. Change management. This can't just be a PowerPoint slide. This just can't be something in the heads of folks in corporate. You have to have a change management model that works and engages the 20 to 1,000 plants Mehul mentioned. And then finally, as was shown with the Pathfinders, you have to integrate with the broader value chain. If all you do is sub-optimize within manufacturing and don't think about how that can deliver value on the recipe and formulation side, the R&D side, the way you engage with customers, the value will not hit the financial statements. It will be captured and lost all within your factories, going from one bottleneck to the other. So what are some of the success criteria? What makes this type of strategy work? First, thinking about that end-to-end operating model that does optimize productivity. Having a clear understanding of your burning platform. I see too many companies really focusing on, hey, how do I get that next 10%? But don't have a clear idea of what happens if they don't invest. The idea of technical debt is a great analogy, a great metaphor that has worked well in the technology world. Am I going to spend $100 million to upgrade my ERP system? Yes, many companies are, but it's because they feel like they can't run their business if they don't. There is a benefit to it, but there's also a burning platform to it. It happens with automation systems, right? Can I still buy parts on eBay for my 30-year-old automation system? I can keep that going for a while, but eventually, right, I need to upgrade that system. And we call that the balance between value preservation and value creation, and you really need to understand both sides of that equation. What are some of the common challenges, the pitfalls? Where do we see companies struggling when it comes to building and executing this strategy? The first one is a senior leader with a strategic vision. In operations, it's really easy to get focused on the day-to-day, to delivering product to customers in the way we committed, and not thinking about continuous improvement and transformation. So you do need a strategic leader with this vision, somebody's full-time job whose it is to make sure this is successful. And then acknowledging that that person's role is not just that Factory of the Future technology initiative. That's one of the roles that needs to exist, but you need more. You need somebody looking across how my future of work and my performance excellence system and the new technology of my factories fit together. You need to have a robust governance and change management model, wrapping this all together. And then a lot of folks struggle with this idea of failing to scale because they fail to prove. So we have a maturity model. We shared a lot about it last year. Vision and value are the major stages. The final stage of vision is proving, and there are different levels of proving. So one is technical feasibility, right? Can this work, this new technology? The other is, and a lot of companies miss this piece as well, when I run a pilot, am I just testing new technology, or am I also testing the process change and the organizational change that goes along with that technology change? And does it drive value? So those are two pieces that most companies do on varying degrees of success. But the final piece is, do I get buy-in of a P&L leader within my organization? It could be a plant manager, it could be a divisional manager, the person who has to hit the P&L requirements on a yearly basis. Were they involved in those pilots? Were they involved and did they have buy-in? And will they sign the line to invest in these changes? And will they be the executive sponsor? Will they own it or not? So I hope some of those ideas are valuable and help you push forward your organization. I hope this idea of the Industrial Productivity Index helps shine a bright light on the challenges manufacturers are facing. If you'd like to get involved more or help push that forward in the organization, there's many opportunities to do it. We are recruiting folks to help right now. But with that, I hope you have a great day and a half, and I look forward to engaging with all of you. Thank you.